Goose morning, everyone! I don't know about you, but I have a grievance that nobody cares about and doesn't really matter, but I think it will make for a half-decent video, so I'm just gonna ask it. Do y'all remember Sandbox mode? You know, those additional side modes in games where you could just mess around with everything the game has to offer with no consequence, running around and experimenting, regardless of the genre? I don't know why, but it seems like sandbox modes in games have become a little more rare. And my question is why? I think there are plenty of games that could benefit from having one. Well, maybe not benefit, but it would make for a good extra part for experimentation. But after looking into it and chatting with some people, I realized that there's a pretty good reason as to why adding sandbox modes into games has fallen out of practice. But I'll get into that in a moment. Let's just get started with the video. First, let's talk about the main game genre I think would greatly benefit from having a sandbox mode in it. Roguelikes. Roguelites? I'm pretty sure it's roguelikes. I always get that mixed up. In these sorts of games where the randomized items and abilities you get on every run can dictate your victory or defeat, I think it's absolutely reasonable to think it a good idea to have a mod where you can apply any items or buff to yourself to lab out strategies. There will be so many times in something like Have a Nice Death, Gunfire Reborn, Balatro, or Risk of Rain where I find a neat synergy, get excited to try it out, only to have it snatched from me when I die really early. Now, I know a lot of these games have like a developer build or a debug mode, but that's not quite what I'm getting at. A sandbox mode specifically would be baked directly into the game as something you don't have to do anything special to get to. Any old casual player could hop in and experiment with builds and strategies. Now, my question is, why does it seem like fewer and fewer games have a sandbox mode baked in? Well, I was talking to some rather smart people in my Discord server, the Honk House, regarding this topic, and we came to a couple of conclusions that I think explain the reasoning pretty well. The first reason, most games are sandboxed by design. The separate sandbox mode likely fell out of popularity due to the astronomical rise in open-world games. As our technological power grows, we're able to make more in-depth games where you can do more things in different ways, to the point that adding a separate mode where you can do whatever you like would be kind of redundant. Older, more linear games benefited more from having a dedicated sandbox mode due to there being less freedom and experimentation in the main game, so it makes sense that developers would stop adding sandbox mode if it wasn't necessary. I mean, I know it's never necessary, but you know what I mean. The other reason is a little more complex. How far do you go with that? When designing something for experimentation with assets, it can get to a point where you lose the point of the original entirely, and this new sandbox mode begins to feel like a different game, more focused on the sandbox aspect than the gameplay itself. One of the greatest examples of this is Gary's mod. Initially thought up as a sandbox mode for Half-Life 2, more and more kept getting added into it, and more people started enjoying it for that open-ended design. So Valve just made it into its own separate thing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just the line you have to walk when making a sandbox mode for a game. What do you put more focus on? The actual gameplay or the experimentation? You can go with the latter, you just have to keep a close eye out for the disconnect between the game itself and the sandbox mode. A little addendum to this section, but it's also important to factor in the actual time and effort it would take to make a sandbox mode secondary to the main game. Some developers likely either don't have the time to actually implement it, or just don't think enough people would partake in that mode for it to be worth it. Just something to think about. Lastly, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. Originally, this video was titled, "What Happened to Sandbox Mode?" because during the first draft, I figured it had just gone and blown away. But this is absolutely not the case. A ton of games have sandbox modes. Minecraft and Fortnite's creative modes, as well as Overwatch's custom lobbies are good ways to experiment with those games and try out all sorts of stuff. And on top of that, most big budget games essentially are sandboxes, so it's more of a sandbox genre than a separate mode for a game. So in reality, the concept of a sandbox mode is nowhere near gone like I initially felt. You just gotta look deeper than the very surface. My blind ass was looking for games with sandbox mode in the main menu with a big red arrow pointing at it. The sandboxes are sandboxing. But I still think it would be a good fit for roguelikes like I mentioned earlier. Could more games stand to have a sandbox mode? Yes, I'm in absolute agreement there. Would every game benefit? Hell no. A sandbox mode would be redundant at best for a lot of games. The benefit of having a mode with everything at your fingertips is a case-to-case basis. Not every game needs one, but there are quite a few games that I think would be fun to see one in. So please, to all the roguelike makers out there, pretty please put in a sandbox mode where you can pick from all the items to experiment with different builds. I think it would be very fun. Also, Plants vs. Zombies, why do you not have a sandbox mode? What the hell? Every tower defense game should have one of those. I cannot believe you've been getting away with that for this long. The rest of you, you're doing fine as is. Any Ralph, that's going to be all I've got for today's video. Normally I complain about talking about things for too long, but I actually did this one in a pretty compact manner. Not a bad job if I say so myself. Anyways, I would absolutely love it if you could stay a moment while my secretary Bonnie shows you some art, and I talk about some of my other ventures I think you might enjoy. For those who are unaware, I've got a second channel now, Goose's Golden Gallery. That's where I post anything that's not long form, like my music and art and stuff. Link's gonna be in the description, alongside my socials and my Discord server, the Hunk House. That's where me and my friends all hang out and talk about stuff. We play games too, like Jackbox and Gartic Phone and stuff. And there's also a Punch-Out channel for you Punch-Out guys. I know you guys are obsessed with that on my channel, so give it a shot. Also, hey, become a headliner. That's what I call channel members. You get access to emotes on streams, first dibs on watching new videos, you can decide the priority of specific videos via votes, a private channel in the Discord server, and you get to be in the credits at the very top. You see that earlier? To get that little doodle by your name in the credits, though, you'll have to join my Discord server and let me know in the Headliners channel how you'd like me to draw your head. Finally, if you have any fan art of me you'd like to share, tag me in it on social media or post it in the channel of my Discord server, and I'll put it at the end of my videos. Okay, I think that's everything from me today. My name is Goose, I thank you very much for watching, and go try out a new game that you've never thought to try before. That's an easy way of experimenting to get a new favorite. That's what I did for Doom Eternal. I did not expect to love that game as much as I did. Just go try and find yourself a new favorite, even if you don't think it's in the place you're looking. It'll be worth it, I promise. Have a goose night!